Okay, hello, what's up? I realized that I did a really long review of the Rooster after having flown it for a year, and I didn't actually show anything about the Rooster or how I build it or my setup or anything like that. So although my setup's not rocket science or anything amazing and it's not even pretty, I just figured I'd pop out a short video to kind of show the quads and whatnot and what's up with that. So yeah, these are my Roosters. Let's go through the components first. So I've got the Runcam Rotor Riot Swift 2 here, which is my, it's an old school CCD cam, full size, blah blah, but I love it. I've tried a bunch of other cams. It's just still my favorite camera. And this particular model, it's got the nice threaded inserts here, which are essential for getting a really good grip on the camera. Now you'll notice that it's not actually locked in by 2 bolts here, and the reason for that is I run a little bit lower cam tilt, but I wanted to keep the front protection, so I moved the camera up by 1 hole, and it's held in with 1 screw on either side. And hey, that actually seems to work pretty good. If I have a really hard crash, yeah, the angle will change, but that's usually the hard enough crash where I've also bent some props and stuff. So tighten those down again, and I set my angles using my Allen tools because I know exactly how much space there should be here, and I'm off to go. I love this camera. It gives me voltage. It has a built-in mic that gives me audio to my ears, which I think is important, and I don't even need to mess with the settings on this camera or anything like that. Great lens, great everything, happy with it, not changing it. Works great. I've broken 1 of them in the past year, although I broke the shell, not the whole camera. So the shell kind of pops. I just popped in a fresh camera, and that was that. So motors, I'm running the Mr. Steele, the, what are they, 2350 kV, 2306 motors. Love them, they're great. Just the right amount of power. I can leap tall buildings and this and that. What I like is they're progressive motors. They're not super aggressive, very smooth. And these ones have been beat up to within an inch of their life. So that brings me to maintaining the motors. Now, the drawback to these motors I find is that I bend a lot of bells because I hit stuff, like especially on concrete, I'll crash on upside down or whatever, and it just tends to be bending my shafts and my motors, so the bells have to be replaced. So I spend 11 bucks, get a bunch of replacement bells, and I just swap bells on the motors to keep them going. And if a motor gets really screwed up and a good old clean and a bell swap doesn't fix it up, I'll change the bearings on it. Swapping a bell is super easy. It's 1 bolt on the bottom here, and bell slides off, other bell slides on, good to go. Now, the other thing I've done that's particular to my build is, okay, I'm running race wire on my arms. Now, why I do that is there's a couple reasons. So one is to prevent against prop strikes. When you run wires all the way down here, you just get prop strikes and the wires get messed up. But also it's a durability and maintainability thing. So it makes swapping arms a lot easier, and it makes swapping motors a lot easier. So to swap a motor, I just go bop, 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 and I can solder and unsolder motors just from this general area without ever having to go close to the 4-in-1. The reason for that is because when you solder, you can get solder blobs or flux or just crap like that just flies around, especially when you're doing a change in the field or something like that. Wait. Go, go, go. I'm talking. So I'd like to keep all that mess out here. I resist soldering near my 4-in-1 as much as possible because a little solder blob or something getting in somewhere can short things out or just cause weird behavior. Very hard to diagnose, and it can just totally ruin your day. Plus, that saves me from having to undo the top plate to swap motors or swap arms. So to swap a motor, yeah, it's 3 solders here. To swap the motor, unscrew it, dong. So I have these layers, right? So like, level 1 would be unswapping bells, super easy to do. 1 bolt, pop, pop, bolt, bell goes on and off. Level 2 is replacing a motor, so that's 3 solders, 4 screws, and motor goes on, motor goes off, whatever. Then if I have to replace an arm, I just untape it, unstick all this stuff, unscrew, and there's 2 screws on the bottom that I unscrew, the arm slides off, oh yeah, and the motor screws, of course. Arm slides off, arm slides on, screw it up again, put the tape back on it, done, good to go. no problem. Oh great, my lipos are... The other thing is, yes, I run these little pads beneath my arms because it just gives the quad something to land on that's soft and has a bit of bounce on it, so I can slide across the ground a bit or bounce off things, and I have a little more clearance as well than if I just landed flat on the carbon. So like I got less shock coming into the quad, and that means less shock on all the electrical connectors and components and this and that. One thing I'd kind of changed is the placement of the Immortal T, so I'm running them up here behind the GoPro. I used to run them at the back, right? So now I still run the Brain 3D mounts out back for my SMA, and it's great. It holds the SMA at a good angle so that it doesn't get, so you don't always have to run it like that, because the stock one comes out at like 90 degrees, and then you have to bend the antenna pretty harshly, and then what happens is that the whole antenna will flex like that. Whereas if you're holding it at 45 degrees all the time, you don't have to bend the antenna so much. When it crashes, your video doesn't go all over the place or hit the props as much. So I like that, and I'm basically trying to separate my VTX a little bit from my radio connection. That's just it's a principle thing. There's no proof that this is actually better or worse, but it seems to work pretty good. So what else do I have here? I have XT60 coming out the top, which I like, so that I don't have any wires hanging everywhere. The wires tend to bunch up behind the session, and the mount here sort of protects the XT60 and the balance leads, and that all works pretty good. That's generally my rooster. So that after a year of flying this, like I have to go in and repair it so little that you can see there's just so much grime everywhere in here, and that's actually a good thing because it means I haven't been having to go in here and change stuff and tweak stuff a lot. It's just worked reliably for quite some time and taken a heck of a lot of punishment. In terms of what I've been breaking on the roosters, I've generally arms. The arms always tend to break right along this line here, and it's usually the front arms. And again, it's just a 2-bolt change on the arm and you're back in the air. Arms are not expensive either, so that's not a big deal. And the carbon, every time I break these, I do like seeing how the carbon breaks, and it always breaks like crisp, like a cracker. It's just a straight line. So the carbon is just really good carbon. Like you don't get this weird delamination stuff happening and all that and whatnot. Definitely get a good TPU mount for your session or whatever you're running. This particular one, since I run lower cam tilt, it's got a bit more spacing underneath of it. And yeah, it has been punished a bit, but it works perfectly, and it lets me slide the GoPro in the side and slide it out the side, which just makes swapping sessions like super easy, or I can access the SD card or whatever I want to do without having to dismantle anything or unstrap anything, or no Velcro gankery or whatever. I've never had an ejection on a session in my life with these mounts. And yeah, it's just a beast basically. It hardly ever breaks, and when it does, it's very easy to fix. So I run KISS V1 fly controller, and got some little soft mount things here, and I've got a Hobby Wing 40 amp 4-in-1 ESC under it. What I like about that Hobby Wing 4-in-1, which I don't think they make anymore, is that it lets me route the wires out the back instead of out the side, so there's just less stuff coming out here, but whatever. Okay, so what I do though is I run pretty long wires on this guy, so that's the reason it's not pretty. I run longer wires so that I have a little more slack if arms break or whatever. Otherwise, every shock just goes directly to those solder joints when an arm comes off, just immediately grabs it. This gives it a little more slack for things to dangle or this or that or what have you. And also, if I need to cut off the wires and resolder them, you know, because when you unsolder wires, like the tips of the wires over time, they get all ganked up and they become basically gross. So I have enough slack that I can trim that, restrip them, retin them, and resolder them clean and get a much better solder connection. The slack helps me do that, and again, I don't have to like always go in near the 4-in-1 to do stuff. I guess the only thing I can say is I got my video stuff out the back here, and the video cable basically runs from the camera underneath the flight control board. It's all twisted to reduce noise, and my video area stays all behind here. The way I mount my UFL on the Unifys is I reinforce it. So I kind of mount it backwards and then loop it around, so that if there is any tension on this guy, it's not going directly on the UFL connector. And that has been a very, very big help, because when things come loose, that UFL is not a strong connector, and if that pops off, you just have endless problems, because then the VTX, you're basically relying on your VTX's overheat protection stuff, which is not good. Although I have to say the Unifys, they don't burn out anymore either for some reason. I used to burn them years ago, and now they're just pretty reliable, man. I'm very happy with them. Where's the receiver, you say? Well, this is probably the most ghetto way of mounting a receiver ever, but I literally don't mount it. So the Unify, what is it? No, the Crossfire Nano, or Micro, whatever, it's the Nano actually. It's right up here, and it's literally just wrapped in some silicone tape and kind of jammed in behind the camera. But, so, it's like super ghetto, yeah, I know. But the reason for that is because, okay, I got all my camera wires here, and the receiver wires are right there, and all that stuff is just sort of jammed in up in the front. I have plenty of slack, and they're not crossing over the video wires, so in theory I have less noise. They're all twisted and everything like that. But, you know, if I want to pull this guy apart, or if I want to change an Immortal T, it means that I don't have to take the whole build apart necessarily. So quite often I can just pop this front section off, and, you know, the Immortal T just comes off super easy, right? And I can get to it without having to, you know, go under my stack or this or that. Also gives a little better cooling for the Unify. The way this guy snaps back in is you just go like that. It's like 2 seconds, man. It's like so easy. Pop, pop, done. I do find that I break a lot of Immortal T antennas. Now, I used to have the Immortal T mounted at the back of the quad, and they used to get messed up and broken up and all that. So I mounted it here, hoping that they wouldn't get broken and stuff, but they still do. So, I don't know, you're just going to lose Immortal Ts, like when you crash and stuff. It's just a fact of life. You got to get used to it. I guess the weird thing about my components maybe is that I run the KISS V1 with this is just a BLHES 4-in-1, which is like ancient technology by now. I have no OSD, no crazy stuff. I'm not running the latest anything. I am running D-Shot. I'm running KISS firmware RC30. I tuned myself. I have my own rates. And I'm just very happy with the way it flies. It's all good. So the one drawback on the Roosters. And let's talk about the elephant in the room, which is the flexing arms. So, you know what? Yeah, the arms, man, on these things, they do move around. And I will actually demonstrate that right now by moving them around. So say you had a super hard crash, and your arms have moved around. What will tend to happen is your props here will tend to contact one another, and you'll hear this rattling noise and just really nasty and stuff. So the fix for that force, I think, and maybe that transmits less shock into the quad. I don't know. I do not think that's like a oh, for God's sake, I was holding it upside down the whole time. Oh, genius vlogger. Shit. Okay, so I'm gonna do that again then. So the arms do move on these guys. You'll crash really hard, and then what will tend to happen is that your props will strike one another. The arms move from the front or the back sometimes. The fix for that is to basically pull it back into position and then tighten some bolts up and then keep flying. Now, purists are going to freak out about that. Like, what? That's unacceptable, la la la. But honestly, I've never had a problem flying with that, ever. It's never affected my experience of flying out in the field. It's never caused me any issues. And, you know, if I crash hard enough to have, like, dislocated the arms a bit, it probably means I've broken some other stuff on the quad too, like a prop or something like that. And in which case I'll want to bring it back to replace the props anyways, and I'll just undo the arms. I also think that when the arms move, they take a little bit of shock and stress. So instead of being completely rigid and bang, transmitting that force directly across everything, like in a really hard crash, maybe they do actually absorb some of the force and save some shock from the rest of the frame. I don't know. I'm pretty sure that's not an intentional design feature of this frame, but I've never had a problem. And really the thing that I like about these is the fact that I can swap arms so easy and this and that. So basically I never really have a day when these things just completely break on me. It's extremely rare. The only time it happens maybe is if I will completely trash a motor, or if I will trash a 4-in-1. I've trashed a couple 4-in-1s. I have trashed a couple motors. That just happens, right? You're not going to get around that. Even with the Mr. Steele pants or whatever, what I have noticed, and you can maybe see from the tops of these nuts, is that these nuts, like this guy took an impact yesterday right here on the top of the shaft, and that's generally where I'm getting the impacts. It's like I'm coming down, I hit something and it comes down and it tends to just go ka-ka-ka. And that bends the bells, and generally, you know, I've looked at it and there's no way around that. I'm going to have to just replace motors. I've had a couple motors like really bend around and stuff, but generally pretty reliable setup. I mean, all the stuff on here is really old. You can see that there's so much gunk around this quad because I haven't had to open it. It's not that I don't maintain my quads, I do. I'll maintain them with this isopropyl alcohol, and then I got a microfiber cloth up here, and they get a rub down after pretty much every flight, and fresh props, all the bolts get tightened and all that stuff gets checked out, and then they're off to go again. But yeah, these guys have just been trooping away for ages and ages and ages, and that is how I do my roosters, I guess. So yeah, I've got the 2 of them. Worst case, one goes down, I just bring out the next one, and that's it. It's the recipe for a really good day out of FPV. So my rationale is you're going to go to some banos. You're going to drive a whole long way, charge up your battery. So you're driving like, I don't know, say in 45 minutes or whatever. You get out there. Now, if you only got one quad or it's a fragile quad, the odds are like one crash, your day's over. You're done. You have to drive all the way back. So you drive out, you fly a few packs, 4, 5, 6 packs, and then bam, out of luck. So your day's wasted, and then you have to come back and fix all your stuff on your one quad, and oh, do you have parts and this and that. So I run 2 roosters. I keep a store of spare arms, because by this point I kind of know what breaks. So I do have some spares for the stuff that I know is going to break. So I have some spare flight controllers, some spare 4-in-1s, some spare arms, 1 spare motor, a lot of spare bells, and that's all I need to keep these things running. But having 2 of them lets me, you know, it lets one of them can be kabammed on the day, and then I know that I can just come home at night and fix it pretty easily and just grab the other quad and fly that. Or if I want, I can repair in the field too. I have the option. So like when I'm going out to fly in crazy spots, I'm not feeling under so much pressure as I may otherwise be feeling, because I have confidence that, yeah, the quads are going to survive, and that's a big deal for me. This brings me to the Hall of Fame, right? So, yeah, this is the kittens area. So my experience building with freestyle frames, it goes back quite a bit. So the X-Hover, Stingy, I'm not going to go through all these, but I basically had the Stingy. I've had, you know, the Shrike Style. I think this is one of the Minion frames from ages ago that actually had a CC3D on it. This is a mix of race quads and freestyle quads, though. These aren't all freestyle quads. What's this guy? Is that a Stingy? That's another Stingy. Now, I'm not going to go through all the frames that I've had, really, and sort of analyze them and bash them or whatever, but I've had a lot of different frames. And I've learned stuff by flying these things and crashing these things. And basically, maintainability is a big deal for me. So like frames that are super complex and stuff like that are just going to cause you headaches, in my opinion. That's why, like, for most people, I would actually recommend the Chameleon Tie, for example, over the Rooster, because it's a little bit simpler, so you don't have like all this hardware and the flexing arms and all that. For most people, that's probably really great. For me in particular, where I fly crazier stuff, the replaceable arms just come in handy. So it means that I'm working here, you know, an arm comes off, I put it on, I don't even really have to go into this stack. That stack stays together. On a lot of quads, that's just kind of not really the case so much for whatever reason. I know other quads have removable arms and stuff, but this one makes it super easy to do and it flies well. But the other thing is that it's tough as nails. So this center section, this is all the original carbon that came with the kit like a year ago. I've not broken anything except for arms. And I think I'd snapped one GoPro carbon thing once. I don't know how. But like this thing, you know, it hit an iron thing. My session did not break. And I actually flew away from that. I power looped into an iron beam on a ceiling and it crashed into the ground and kept on flying. Oh, I got a little bit of red paint here too, is it? Oh, and there too. The point is, like, the metal cage, man, they just nailed it with this thing. And the fact that the whole quad is just built around that, and the session is built around that, it's just rock solid. Like, this has been through so many crashes, and there's not a mark on it or a dent on it. That's a lie. There are some marks, scratch marks, but the structural integrity of the thing is completely uncompromised. And with most of the traditional frames where you have bottom plate, top plate, and standoffs, in my experience, like in a big crash, they just like collapse, like they just get totally ganked up. This thing has survived the same crashes or worse crashes than my other frames, and it's survived them with like nothing happening at all. Just nothing breaks. I've hit stuff hard enough that the camera resets itself and all that, but the frame is perfectly fine and the parts are all perfectly fine and I don't have to do anything and it keeps flying and it's great. So like, as a platform to enjoy FPV with, it's just a really greatly designed platform. It's not just the camera mount, like being titanium and strong, that's part of it, but it's also the modularity. So to maintain this, it's 4 screws and I pop that plate off and the whole quad is just together, right? Like I don't have bits hanging here and there. If I really want to get in, I can pop off this guy with another 4 screws if I really want to, but I don't have to every time I want to work on my quad, but I can if I want, and it's pretty easy to do. I love that the GoPro is mounted properly without a bunch of faffy Velcro and stuff like that. It's same angle every time, holds it, never smashed a GoPro. It's basically just a real dream to live with day to day. And that is why I love this frame, and this is why I'm going to probably keep flying this thing for like another year or so or whatever. I see the Marmot coming out, a super sexy frame and everything, but like these things fly so good that I don't see why I would change anything. If I had an unlimited budget to change stuff on these quads, like I would probably get new 3D protectors just for like because they would look cooler or something. But no, I would just put on fresh motors. I would probably upgrade to the KISS V2 flight controller, and I'd probably put the KISS like 4-in-1 on it because that's super expensive. But then I would have like, you know, all sorts of cool telemetry and stuff I could get. Although, come to think of it, I don't have an OSD anyway, so would that be useful? I don't know. But anyways, like that's all I would do. I would go KISS V2 stack on this guy, and I would just refresh. I wouldn't change to any other motors. I'd just refresh all my motors brand new, and I would save these, of course. They would go in my backup pile of parts. Yeah, I'd get new 3D printed stuff, and that's pretty much it. Those are my roosters. Again, 1 year old. Like literally almost as of today or whatever or something. It's end of January, and I think I got them in the end of January last year. They've done me very proud. They are better than any other quad I've flown, like in terms of the flight performance, but also in terms of the maintainability. A lot of people do not consider maintainability. So there's like, actually it's 3 things. It's the flight performance, it's the way it flies, it's the strength of the thing, it's tough, but it's also easy to maintain. Those 3 things are like the holy trinity of what makes a good quad setup, in my opinion. I think a lot of people don't really consider the maintainability or the toughness very much. It depends where you're gonna fly. If you're in a park, you don't need a super tough frame, but if you wanna fly anywhere and any time and whatever and blah, 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 get a tough frame, man, and get one that's easy to fix. Like, I mean, normal top plate, you know, standoff frames, I'll never use them again because they're just a pain to work on, and they're not that tough. Like when you hit something hard, all the standoffs will, you know, collapse and bend, and the whole thing will shift around, and maybe it'll hit your electronics, and camera's gone, and they're a nightmare, man. A real nightmare. It only takes that one hard crash for you to discover that for yourself. But I'm not saying that's going to happen immediately. It's very rare, but when it does, you will not like it. These guys don't have that problem. They're good little boys. So while I'm here, maybe I'll just go around the little studio, because I've never showed anyone this stuff, man. So these are my operational quads. So I used to be really into racing, so I got 2 lightweight flosses that are like 200 something, you know, like low 200 grams. They're pretty old now. Then these are my current racing floss frames here. The canopies, full-on RGB LEDs, and I think 2207 killer motors on them. They're so fast that no one's beaten them yet, and they're ready for pretty much any pro race I would want to go to. Actually, this could be a whole separate topic, but I don't know. I just kind of like this is probably the best race build I've ever done in my life, and it's ironic that I just don't race much anymore. Reason for that is because racing's a bit harder on the equipment and stuff like that, but also the guys I fly with don't tend to fly very much anymore, but also there's not really organized races where I am, so there's not much competition. And the reason for that is there's a lot of bureaucracy and nonsense and whatnot and stuff, right? So basically racing just isn't a thing here, and freestyle is what I mostly do. This guy is my Shrike Style. This was another really good frame in its day. The only problem this guy had is like for my setup, it just didn't have much room for a GoPro on it. But I liked that guy. He was good. True X and everything. But no, these are where it's at. So, soldering iron, got a Weller. That broke, unfortunately, because I plugged it into the wrong port on my transformer and it exploded, so it doesn't actually work. But it's a really good soldering iron. Got tiny whips in there. Baby Hawk. These are basically the frequently used tools. Got soldering stuff here. So if I want to work on a quad, I just grab stuff from there and come down, solder, work on it, go away. My tools I actually keep in my flight bag, which is the Think Tank. Yeah, Think Tank Airport Helipack. Actually, generally, this is where I store all my stuff, because like then it's just ready to go. I'm sorry there's a lot of garbage, because you know the reality is that's how things are. There's garbage around. Lipo Charging, very important. So I have this power transformer because I live in a country where we have 220 volts, not 110. So to power the Weller, I had to power it off 110, and that's how I blew it. Is I plugged it into the 220 thing, and smoke came out of it. I was really upset because that Weller was a darling soldering iron. As you can see, so I run an iCharger. It goes back to a power supply that is, where the hell is the power supply? It's somewhere down there. Is it behind all that shit? Oh god, that's not good. So basically I have a charging stand that it comes out so that I can access it, and then it slides away when I don't really need to access it. But yeah, this guy runs off a power supply and lets me charge 2 parallel boards at once. Now, parallel charging, okay, the way I handle parallel charging is I've got this little ISDT battery checker. So every time I come in from a flight session, I will check every single LiPo. Fidgety. So I basically check all my LiPos, I see what voltage that I've left in that, and then I will generally range my LiPos out on the table in terms of what voltage they have left in them. I'll group the similar ones together, and I'll charge the similar ones at a time. So sometimes if I have like a whole bunch of random stuff everywhere, I'll just bring a bunch up to storage. Like I'll put them in LiPo storage, bring them up, and I'll equalize them in batches until they're all equal, and then I'll bulk charge them. Or if there's a bunch that are similar, I'll just put them on a balance board and charge them as a group. And of course, you're always changing the number of amps you're putting out so you don't blow. I charge around 1.5 or 2C, no problem. For my goggle batteries, I have the 18650 stuff, so I just always have these things on charge, just refill them, put them in the goggle battery case, off I go. And yeah, the good old radio charging down there. So all the stuff that's charging basically lives all happy, just like sort of over there in the corner, and it's done. I tend to charge while I'm in the room so that I like to be working on stuff, and I like to watch stuff while it's charging so that I can monitor temperatures and stuff and make sure nothing is wonky with any of my batteries. And that's pretty important, man, because I've had one in the last 4 years of flying. I've had one battery actually puff and like explode, but since I was in the room, I caught it in time, and I went outside and I just put it on a marble floor and let it burn out. But since then, no problems. You just got to put in the effort to do it properly. So I'm going to dig into this. That's my setup, basically. One thing I do recommend is get a pegboard. These are from IKEA. They're actually stuck to the wall using this 3M Command sticky tape stuff, and then these are just racked on it. And I could put as many racks up here as I want, but it's really cool to be able to put stuff on the wall and have it sort of accessible, but not in the way. This is, for me, this is a big upgrade. It's a bit of a mess now because I have a cat living on here. Those are dead lipos that I am discharging to zero gradually. Yeah, a few spare parts, but honestly, like, I can clean this up to almost, you know, showroom condition with very little effort, because all my parts are arranged into these drawers, and I don't want to show you all this stuff because it's going to be really embarrassing because I have way too many parts. Like, for example, I have a whole drawer full of more frames on top of those frames. Yeah, bit of a quad hog, dude. Anyways, that's the end of my Rooster review. I did want to show the Roosters. I'm going to go out and fly, I think, somewhere today, just for fun. Don't know where yet. I'll figure that out. But yeah, I just wanted to complement that earlier verbal review with a little bit of like a walkthrough of the actual build and what's on it. And I'm cool to share things. So if anyone wants, you know, my KISS PIDs or rates or GoPro settings or whatever, I'll share that too, because it's nothing rocket science, and I don't, you know, I'm not one of these guys who's like all, it's professional trade secret or whatever. No, man, like whatever I found, I'll share it. Doesn't mean that my stuff's the best or whatever. It just means it's working for me. Doesn't mean I'm not gonna maybe figure out something better the next day, but yeah, I'm happy to share anything where I'm at. So feel free to ask in the comments. And where's my cat, man? Where'd she go? Yeah, everyone should have a quad kitten, by the way, that lives on your desk. It's very amusing trying to build a quad when you have a cat, like a little kitten just playing with all your stuff. Anyways, yeah, I'm gonna shut up, recharge my GoPro, sort out this lipo situation here, and that's it. Get a good flight bag too, man, like a proper good flight bag. So all my, literally 90% of what I need to run these quads is in this bag, and it's all organized, and that could be another topic. I don't know. I'm gonna shut up, take it easy. Thanks for watching. If you made it through, congratulations. Yeah, bye.